You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherlands calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa. So good evening everyone. I am absolutely sorry. We had a little bit of, not little bit, really almost half an hour into the show, and the cameras were just acting, so we had to reboot everything. So it's a technical error from our part, and I want to apologize to Professor James Small for waiting for so long, and that we had to reboot and connect the whole system. But I see all of you were already waiting, because immediately we go live, I see the number of viewers just running up, of course, because Professor James is here today, and we've not had him for a while. We want to hear from him. We want to also get feedback on how he's doing, and also to report our activities that we've been doing in the past. The last time we had him here was on the 31st, and he did share that message to us, the unity, the need for us to stay more closer and more in touch together. So tonight he's going to, just generally, we talked about it this week. It is impossible to actually give our teachers, particularly our great teachers, a topic. So they come and they educate us on what we're supposed to know and what we should be doing now. So I'll just greet Professor James Small back in studio and ask you, what is it that we're going to be learning tonight, Prof? How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Sister Susan, and to the audience. I think it's a new year. It's 2022. We're going to talk about how do we get to be free. The only thing we should talk about is our freedom. The eradication of the mental slavery in the West and the eradication of colonialism on the continent. And I think we got a lot of situations from Mali to Ethiopia, where the hands of America, France, Britain, Saudi Arabia is in the middle of our business. And we don't seem to understand how to get their hands out of our business. So that's what we're going to talk about. I don't know what else to say. Is how do we get these people out of our business so that we can do the things that we have to do? We have the richest piece of real estate on the planet Earth. We have the most beautiful people on the planet Earth. We've got almost 3 billion people across the earth that are African. And we have too many that are living in poverty. How can you live in poverty when you've got most of the diamond, most of the gold, most of the cobalt, most of the coltan, most of the tungsten? We've got everything, the iron ore. We've got everything. And we still let the thieves come in and bully us around with some pretense of democracy. Africans invented democracy. All of our nations had a democracy. All democracy implies is that the people rule. Africa was always ruled by the people. Communal, collective, and cooperative. Now we have, you want to know whether democracy works? Ask the Black Americans. We've been here 400 years, and we're still fighting to vote. We're fighting in the Congress of the United States right now for a voters' right bill. We're fighting for a bill to make sure we can get jobs without discrimination. After 400 years in a democracy, they want to impose on everybody else in the world. Don't we see what's going on? We're the litmus test for you. You want to know how Britain treat black people? Ask the blacks who live in Britain, not the British diplomat. You want to know how America treats its African people? Ask us who live here. We don't have democracy. We don't have justice. We don't have a fair opportunity to make wealth. The same thing in Britain, the same thing in Holland, the same thing in Portugal. Our colonialists still control our lives. And on the continent, I was looking at ECOWAS, and I'm going to read it. It sounds so good. Just listen to this. This is ECOWAS. I mean, it's considered to be the pillow regional bloc of the continent of Africa. And it's called an African Economic Community. And the stated goal of ECOWAS is to achieve collective self-sufficiency. Well, how are we going to achieve collective self-sufficiency? When of the 15 ECOWAS states, 8 of them are called the Francophone states, and they have to give all their wealth to France. 79% or something of the wealth of those nations every year is deposited in the French banks to be used by the French government. What kind of freedom is that? Where is their freedom there? And this is, oh, well, we signed a treaty. You sign a treaty under duress. It's not a treaty if somebody's got a gun to your head. Your colonial master for 200 years enslaved you. And then the world said it's time for it to be over. So they come put a gun to your head, says, now sign this treaty that you're going to remain a colony and give me all your wealth. And even if you want to borrow your wealth, you have to borrow it with interest. Without the African wealth, and that's just in West Africa, go in the Indian Ocean. The French is controlling African people's lives there too. You know, we took away our wealth from France. France would collapse next week economically. And much of Europe was gone. So what is wrong with those states who call themselves ECOWAS? Why are you messing with the people in Mali and you're boycotting your own people? Why did you stand by and allow for the boycott of Zimbabwe? What crime did Zimbabwe commit? You didn't execute Ian Smith and the white Rhodesians for murdering hundreds of thousands, if not millions of our people. You didn't have a Nuremberg trial for the white South African apartheid people. You forgave them. You came up with some foolishness called peace and reconciliation. So you can come and testify that you beat Stephen Biko's brains out in front of his mother and then go home to your family free. What foolish minds do these stupid things and want to walk around the world as though they're diplomat and heads of states? That's why everybody laughs at us. That's why the people of the world treat us like they do. No one treats people who respect themselves, respect their wealth, respect their culture, respect their values, respect their ancestors the way we get treated around the world by everybody. In China, I remember about 10 years ago, they were killing African men in the streets for dating Chinese women. They had the students had to run and seek sanctuary in people's homes. But we go to China, and even though they treat us like garbage, we can have some merchants business in their poor areas and make a little money to send home. But all the money in the world is right there at home in Africa. We just have to say there isn't a single treaty that wasn't forced on the African by duress, whether it was the Canadian, the French, the Belgians, and the Americans in the Congo, which came as a result of murdering our leaders, starting with Patrice Lumumba and ending with Kabila, whether it was the 16 Francophone state heads of state that have been murdered by the French, whether it was the multi-government overthrow of Nigeria time after time by British MI5, whether it was the total destabilization of the South by the white South Africans and their Israeli intelligence counterpart from the Mossad. And yet, these people who have nothing, what do they have in Israel besides a desert and a few nuclear bombs that they shouldn't have? They tell the other people around them, you can't have nuclear weapons, but we, the Israeli, can have nuclear weapons. We have no wealth, but we can sit all over Africa and put the diamonds, sew them in our coats, and take them home. And so if an African tried to sell his own diamond, we'll call that blood diamond. And you will not be allowed to sell your diamonds in the world unless it comes to us, the thieves. What the hell is wrong with us? You're like, this is crazy stuff. I don't know the background of everything that's going on in Mali, but I know these young people who we are calling military people want to break away from French colonialism. So why is ECOWAS supporting French colonialism on Mali? By boycotting everything, including food products, going into Mali for its poor people. If you want to have a discussion, you sit at the table like Russia and America and Bulgaria. They sit at the table and they try to work their stuff out. You sitting and listening to the people who have assassinated, France have assassinated more African leaders than any other assassin group or nation or intelligence operation in the history of Africa. And you're going to tell me you're going to sit with them to talk about democracy? The whole world saw what they did in Libya. Killing Gaddafi and overthrowing Libya was nothing but a robbery. They robbed the treasury of Libya. They stole billions of dollars, the Americans and the French and the British, to keep their economy from propping. Had nothing to do with ideology, because Gaddafi was doing more for his people than any nation state in the world. I hope they enjoy their suffering very well now for going along with Western robbery and murder. And here we are in Africa in 2022, conducting ourselves like it's 1935. This is 2022, not 1935, not 1885. And we still can't tell the difference between an African and a Frenchman, or an African and a white American, or an African and a British, that we still allowing these people to come in and tell us how to run our governments. We still allow our people to walk around in poverty while our wealth get carted to the seashore, put on barges and planes, and go off to another country where there are people who have no wealth is living at the top of the food chain. That don't make any sense to anybody. It don't make sense to people who don't have any sense. It's just beyond anything I can understand. But there's one great hope. The young people of Africa, as I see you on Facebook and I see you on the social network, you understand what's going on and you're going to make Africa free. Don't back up. Don't back down. Because I hear you. And I know you hear all of the elders who've come to you. And I hear your dialogue and I hear your speeches. I know the young people are going to take control of these governments and put the wealth of those nations in the hands of the people of the African nations. And so if we are going to talk serious in 2022, we have to drop this diasporan continental African foolishness, because I can find as many hardcore Africans in Brazil as I can find on the continent. Mm-hmm. And I can find weak people in Brazil like I can find weak people on the continent that have been injured by our oppression over the years. Africans are Africans. Yes, we need to discuss what happened. How did our system break down? How did the enemy take so much advantage of us? And that's why I keep telling you, study history. It gets rid of the white man's mystery. Set up new curriculums in the schools of Africa. Teach the truth about what happened. I never go around and say my people throw me into slavery, because I know history. I know who ran the slave trade. I know who had the guns and who didn't have guns. I knew who were the farmers and who was the military arm coming from Europe and the Turkish Ottoman Empire Arab world, who ran the slave trade until the Western Europeans came in the 1400s. So my people have suffered more on the continent than those of us who were sold into slavery have suffered off of the continent at the hands of the same people. The American English speak with one accent and the British Englishman speak with another accent, but they're the same people. They got the same banking system, the same insurance company, the same investment house. They run the same airlines. They run the same shipping lines. They run the same telecommunication systems. Those are the people who we're up against. Because our leaders won't say all treaties will be abrogated until just treaties are put together for the sake of the future of African people. You don't have to respect any treaty that was signed under duress. You don't have to respect any treaty that is unjust. How can you accept a treaty in Congo with the millions of Congolese people murdered after Leopold? Forget about Leopold. He only killed 25 million of us, and we act like Belgium is our friend. 25 million. The Jews had 6 million killed, and they're still tracking down Nazis today to slit their throats. In one country, we had 25 million, and we scampering to speak French, English, and Belgian as though they have some authority over our minds, speaking the language of our enemies. I'm stuck in their country, born into their language, and just learning to speak little bits of African languages and my Creole, my pidgin, that we speak here, of our old language. But we've got to be clear. If we really want an African that we want to see, then you've got to look back to go forward. And you got to mean it. Studying history is not an exercise to go around and show people how much you know. Studying history is to give you the ability to come up with a plan for the future so your children and grandchildren don't have to go through this. So that you don't have to leave your beautiful land and come in the snow and the ice of America to practice medicine and make some money. When we have some of the best medical schools in the world, we have some of the best herbalists in the world. We have some of the best herbs in the world for healing the world, right in our beloved Africa. But our politicians don't even know how to take care of our physicians. They don't know how to take care of our school teachers. They don't know how to take care of our policemen. So they don't have to stop me and you on the road and take our little penny just to eat chop for themselves. So we have to say 2022 is going to be different. That we're going to act like Africans. We are the human beings. We are humanity. We're not devils. We have not invaded other people's countries and enslaved them. We have not committed genocide against nobody in Europe or nobody in Asia. We're the human beings. We are true humanity. What is the African system? What is the African way of seeing the world? We got to go back, study our history. Cameroon should not be a fight over the English interest and the French interest or the Islamic interest and the Christian interest. None of those are ours. There's a Cameroon before Christianity comes. There's a Cameroon before the Fulani jihads that led to the Muslim coming. There's a Cameroon before the English speakers or the French speakers. Where is that Cameroon? How did they behave? You know, the Ghana, before the British, before the Danes, before the Brandenburg Germans, before the Portuguese, before any of them came, raping up people along the coast and murdering as they go. Putting a gun to one brother's head to make him help you fight the other brother and call him your ally when you write your false history book. What was the Akan people before they came. You know, who were the Fulanis before the whites came, before the Arabs came? If we don't go back there, don't tell me anything about democracy. I live in what is supposed to be the bastion of democracy, and I've never been able to enjoy it or be protected by it or watch it at work. What I've seen in America is tyranny against African people for hundreds of years. Tyranny against the so-called native Asiatics who came before they came, because they weren't here first either. We were. And they practiced tyranny against us. And I do sympathize with what the whites have done to them. But they still would rather ally with the white genociders than with us, whose land they came on. History will make you think differently than you do now. I'm an African. It doesn't matter where I'm born in the world. Malcolm said, a cat had kittens. This is Mr. Malcolm X, Alhaj Malik El-Shabazz. He said, if a cat had kittens in an oven, they don't become biscuits. I'm not a biscuit. I'm an African. My mother wasn't a biscuit. My grandmother, who was a traditional priestess, was not a biscuit. They were born in North America, but they were Africans. My great-grandfather was born in Africa. My great-grandmother was born in Sierra Leone. My other great-grandmother was born in Nigeria. My other great-grandfather was born in what is now Rwanda and the Uganda area. There was no Rwanda or Uganda then. I know exactly where I come from. I know exactly who I am. I know my names. I got a bunch of them. But I only need to have one name. I'm an African. That's the only name I need. And if we're going to ever be free, yes, we got some mix-up minds. I woke some of them up about 10 years ago with a speech on 125th Street, and people are still spinning. And we get some wicked African minds over here, who we call African Americans, because our brains are so messed up. Do you know last year we killed 8,600 of our own people? That's how broken we are. That's how ignorant we are. 8,000 African Americans was killed last year, 8,600, by the hands of other African Americans. Because our minds are broken, our souls are broken, our culture is broken, our spirit is broken, our brain is ignorant on what the human being African is supposed to be. But we have many of the same things happening right there on the continent now. Every country I go to, the prisons are filled. And the persons we've committed the crimes against that have thrown us in the prison has been our own people. So what do? We have to, we can't just pour libations, so we're pouring libation to our ancestors. No, we better become those ancestors. Who were they? That's who I want to be. I want to be like them. I want to be like those ancestors I pour libation to. So I need to find out, who were they? What kind of human being were they? What kind of father were they? What kind of mother were they? What kind of son or daughter were my ancestors? That's who I want to be. And I got enough knowledge now through history to know who killed them, who robbed them, who abused them, who was their enemy, because those are the people who are now my enemies. And they can't come and play with me with words like democracy and parliamentary and government. Your crime-ridden societies is not something we should desire. But they got us desiring ice cream in a snowstorm. What do I need ice cream in a snowstorm when it's freezing for? But that's how stupid they are, and we are becoming as stupid as they are. I would like to have some ice cream if I'm walking down the street in the crowd because it's hot. And so some good ice cream will cool me off. That makes sense. But walking through a snowstorm in New York with an ice cream cone, does that make sense? But they make you make it make sense. So we sit and we say, I'm a Nigerian. You're a Liberian. You're a Ghanaian. I'm a Malian. I'm a Chadian. I'm a Cameroonian. That don't mean a damn thing. Because if it meant anything, we would be free. You wouldn't be, my beloved Dr. Tata, you wouldn't be in Germany. You'd be home in your heaven. Unless you just want to go on vacation and see other parts of the world. And that's a good thing. It's always good to travel and to learn. But why can't we be in our heaven? Why am I in America? People say, oh, you can buy a ticket and go back home. Yes, I can. But I'm forced now to be a soldier to fight. All my life, I'm fighting. So others can find their way back home. I got a business in Africa. I have a home in Africa. I have family in Africa. I could get on a plane and go and never look back here 1 second, any moment I want to. So, but I'm not the problem. What about all the people who are African Americans who are scared of Africa? Literally scared. Grown people, PhDs, master's degrees, teaching at universities, and they're afraid to go to Africa. We've got billionaires, millionaires, multimillionaires, and I don't think we have invested 1% in Africa. And we say, oh, we want to be free, we want to be free. But we won't get on a plane and go to Nigeria and invest in Nigeria, or invest in Zimbabwe, or invest in Namibia, or invest in South Africa. We said this white man is racist, he's abusive, he's still got us under oppression, but oh, please, Mr. White Man, can I invest in you? You know how much money we made last year and gave back to Arabs, Asians, and Europeans primarily? We spent a little with Africans and African Americans. Nearly $2 trillion. Do you know how much money that is? To squander with your enemy? Nearly $2 trillion. If we invested 1/3 of that in Africa, we can turn things around in multiple countries. But in our brain, we are so broken and shattered culturally that we worship our enemy's God. And our enemy's God said, our gods are witches. Our gods are evil. So if our gods are evil and witches and criminals, then so were our ancestors. So then what does that make us? I walked away from my enemy's God decades ago. Because my enemy's gods wanted to kill my grandmother's God. And I love my grandmother too much. I must protect my grandmother's God. And we think it's cute to say which branch of the invading army's religion we belong to. Even I, when I was young, thought I was good. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rahman. I could speak their language and pray in their language better than they could. I could teach quarterly and catechism better than they could. It didn't do nothing to free me or my people. Freedom is being shackled to your identity. And your identity is African. And our ancestors worked out what our relationship to the universe and the divinity is. And we spit on it. That's why I make sure, you see that statue behind me? Every time I'm on any program, I make sure I have an image of an African symbol of the concept of divinity that should guide the development of our characters as human beings. Do you see African people seeking revenge against Europeans? We don't do that because we're human beings. But all the crime they've committed against us, we don't seek revenge on them. We welcome them to our table and in our houses. When we go to their countries, we try to fit in and do well. And yet nothing has changed on the exploitation of the African. by the European capitals and the Asian capitals of the world. I'm tired of being robbed. I'm tired of being raped. I'm tired of being pedophile and molested and kidnapped. And then be handed the God of the killer, the God of the rapist, the God of the pedophile, the God of the robber, the God of the genocider. I'm at their feet worshiping. That doesn't make any kind of sense. Even the dumbest creature would know there's something wrong with that. I heard a young brother from Nigeria speaking a few days ago about the use of language. And he says, when you go to the UN, the Chinese people are speaking Chinese. The Malaysian people are speaking Malaysian. The Germans are speaking German. The French are speaking French. The English is speaking English. We are speaking a foreign language. We dare not go and speak our Cameroonian language while at that podium. We're going to speak French. We dare not go and speak our Akan tree at the UN podium. We speak English. But the others speak in their mother tongue because they want to be attached to the soul and the spirit of their ancestors. We go and we speak in the enemy's town, so we attach to the soul and the spirit of our enemies. Sometimes I sound harsh. I'm not harsh. I'm a very loving, pleasant, good person, but I will defend the integrity of being African. And I've never done it for money. I have never needed anything in my life, but I've always been broke. But I've never needed for anything because those ancestors always took care of me. Those Orishas, those Obosun, those bush gods that you're scared of, they take care of me. They take care of my family. Some people say, aren't you scared? What am I going to be scared of? Malcolm X said, the secret to life is to have no fear. We'll all surrender this body one day because it'll wear out, it'll get old. But I'm not my body. This is simply a place I live. This is a shell. This is a house. This is a building. It's not me. I'm my ancestors, as they were their ancestors. And as one day my children and grandchildren would be me, their ancestor. And so I want to give them an ancestor that's alive, African, and clear thinking so they can improve upon me when their time comes to make that improvement. And they're already doing it for those who are old enough now. We've got to get involved in the local politics to make it practical. You can't sit back and let the party boys, because they got a degree from America or Britain or France, run for political office. You, the farmer, you, the artisan, you, the student, you have to run for political office if you want to take control of your governments without having to fight and kill each other in that way. Then you've got to participate in the political process. And yes, the others will try to block and stop you, as they've done. But you have to be clear, no, I can no longer let you wave your PhD around or your medical degree you got from a foreign school around, or the fact that you have a Fulbright scholarship from America, and so that qualifies you to lead me. No, what qualifies you to lead an African nation is to service the people who are there, to become a servant of those people and do only what they collectively want done for their benefit.
Ashe.
And so I'm not we no more, I'm old, but you young people, it's your time. Stop being afraid. Stop running away from your country just to suffer over here in the West. I know what many of my African brothers and sisters go through when they move to this country. Everybody isn't lucky enough to get a scholarship and go to university and come out a lawyer or doctor. Most people don't go through that. Most people suffer. Most people suffer the racism, the abuse, the misuse by men, the rape. If you're very unlucky to get sold into the sex trafficking or working, driving a truck for nothing, the poor men are doing. And because people know you're not going to fight them because you're afraid to lose your green card, afraid of not getting one, you would take abuse that no one else would take from them. And then every 5 years or so, you buy up a bunch of goods and dress up and go home to show your great accomplishment while you hide your great pain. Let's face the truth. As Africans, what we have to suffer in the world, outside of our house, our Africa. If we do that, then no one will mess with us anywhere in the world. We'll be treated with the respect we deserve as human beings. But when you don't even have a nation to speak for you, then you have to submit to the cruelty of your enemies when you're in their nation. That has to stop. But it'll only stop if Africa gets strong enough to speak to the world and say, you do not abuse my children, whether you're in America, France, Brazil, Germany, England, or China. You do not abuse my nationals. You do not abuse my children, because I got gold and diamond and cobalt and coltan and all kinds of other things that say, I will stop you right here and now, and I will put sanctions on you as far as trade is concerned, and you will not make another penny of me that you treat my people in an appropriate manner. But where's that leader to say that? Where is he or she? I remember sitting at a lunch table at a university in America with a beautiful young leader who dared to say that. And I spoke with this young man, younger than me, and his name is Thomas Sankara. And in less than a year and a half, because he said those things even in the OAU meeting, the French and their puppets assassinated that child who came to service his people. Camaro, his murderer, sat on the other side of me. And every time I think of that, my skin crawls. That something didn't let me kill him there in that restaurant, so Sankara could deliver for his people what he had come to deliver. The other day, a friend from Ethiopia was very concerned because of the fighting. She's a sister. So she left the capital and went to visit an old friend in Namibia. And so she called me and said, she's at this friend. And I said, who's your friend? And he says, oh, the former president, President Nyomo. Well, I said, well, tell him Brother Small send his greeting, because we knew each other in our young revolutionary days. And when Nyomo needed help, he came and hid among us. And even the American FBI couldn't find him until he could go back home and lead his swapper. And the president looks good. He's still tall and upright. Like me, he's got his gray beard now. But you've had great warriors and great leaders. You better not lose them. You better see who they were and learn from them. Immanuel Cabral. Who was he? The average African or African American don't even know. What was PAIGC? This is the revolutionary organization of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verdes that drove the Portuguese into the sea under the leadership of Immanuel Cabral. Who was Cabral? What was ideas? What was his ideas? What did he leave us? And the one thing that he said and was clear about, no matter what political ideology you're talking about, you do not allow the loss of the culture of the African people. If your freedom movement isn't about sustaining and maintaining the culture of the African people, then that's not a freedom movement.
Ashe.
So that's what if we're going to go anywhere in 2022, let's go black. You know, let's go back to black. Let's be Africans again. Doesn't matter what your complexion is, because I'm all browned up and Susan's all browned up. That's what war do to you. But our minds should stay black up. You know, we take our minds back to black, to be Africans again, so we can give them more again and hope they do better. We Africans gave the world Christianity, not that model that they brought back to us, but the foundation of that model we gave to the world. We, the African, gave the world the Hebrew tradition. We, the African, gave the world the Muslim tradition. And how dare they come back to us with their sword and their guns, murder us by the millions, take our land and our children and abuse us the way they have in these almost 2,000 years. Then give us the bastardized form of the very spiritual system we gave them to save them from the caves they crawled out of. And stop lying to yourself about who they are. Civilization is not a building and a paved street. You rob enough people, you can build a big building and a paved street. Civilization is the protection of the people who walk down those streets and use the building. You know, the most civilized thing a person could do is value the life of the person standing next to them as much as he should value his or her life. That's the African tradition. And every time we practice it, they chop our hands off. So now we have to learn enough from history so we can have the protection when they try to take our hands. We can take theirs first and says, that's a bad habit that you'll never do again. And others will learn from that. We have enough information. We don't have to write another book on African culture, written by Africans, that fill the libraries of the schools and the universities in Africa and much of the rest of the world. If we go into all the museums in America and take the African things out, they could put most of this American junk in one museum. If you go to England and take everything African out, or Belgium, or France, or Germany, they can put what's left of their culture in one museum. And we know that, those of us who've traveled abroad and those of us who've been studying. And yet we act like we are the nobodies when we are the everybody. We are the African, God's first creation. Everybody comes from you. That's a scientific fact that no one can dispute. We built the first civilizations. Everybody agrees with that. No one can dispute except the fools and the ignorant. We are the first scientists and mathematicians. No one can refute that because they save all our material in the museum, thank God. But it would have been better at home saved by us. We were saving them very well before we got robbed. But let 2022 be a time when we make a determination that we will make sure that every African woman, child, and man will have the food, the clothing, the shelter, and the security they deserve wherever they live in the world. We've got enough wealth to ensure that. We've got enough educated and skilled and tooled people to ensure that. We simply have to get the African mind so that we use our tools and our education to ensure that. We have the wealth in the earth where we live to ensure that we can have a bathroom with a good sewage disposal system. We've got the wealth and the technology to ensure that we have fresh running waters. We know how to dig a hole in the ground and put a pipe in the ground to ensure that. That's what we should be thinking about. You know? Now, who's going to make the next rap music? Because rap music may sound good, but it helped destroy the very socialization process that was saving the Black youth in America during the 60s and the 70s. And then our enemy took our own music coming from our own children and turned it into an enemy. Where our mothers were called the B words. And our brothers killed each other over stupidity like a lyrics in a song. And then wanted to stand up in the world and raise their hand that they're famous. That's an animal. That's not a human being. Don't imitate that. There were others of us who didn't do that. Right here in this America. We played our African music. We call them blues and jazz and hip hop and bebop and spirituals and rag. And we didn't sell heroin and coke and crack that killed more than 1 million of our people. Less than 2% did that. The rest of us was either fighting against it or running from it. So don't look to imitate the filthy part of the African American that was forced on him by the white American with his money and his power. There's more to us than that. Study our history. We fought for freedom for 400 years nonstop. Study the history of the leaders of Malawi going back to the 1800s. And guess what? The leaders of Malawi and the leaders of the ANC and the PAC and the leaders of Zimbabwe were friends with African Americans ever since the 1800s. We were calling ourselves Pan-Africanists. Many of them came and studied at Tuskegee with Booker T. Washington. Many of them tutored under W.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey because they knew they were one Africa and one African. Even back then, we've lost our way now. Everybody's fighting now for white people approval of how intellectual we can be and how much of his associations we can belong to and how much of awards we can get while our children suffer both in America, in Jamaica, in Brazil, and in Africa. We suffer in the UK. You go down to Brixton and see if you're going to find a paradise there. You know? We suffer in Germany. There's some of us that are doing well in Germany, but Germans have its black slums, its black ghetto, and treat us like trash. We suffer in France. We suffer in Italy. You know? So 2022 should be about loving Africa, loving self, learning the history of this continent, learning the history of the Africans who went abroad. Let's stop blaming each other for things we didn't even do. You know, I remember I resented when I first came to Africa and one of the beautiful kings, chiefs, apologized for slavery that he had nothing to do with. But he felt that this is a way to tell our brothers in the diaspora was hurting, you can be welcome back home. Mm-hmm. No, let's tell each other the truth. Somebody came up on our shores with big ships, with cannons and cannons and cannons, with big cannonballs. And they fired them at us. And they came ashore with their muskets and their rifles and their swords. And they used them against us. We were fishermen and we were farmers and hunters. We were not warriors and soldiers. Stop using that term, our ancestors were warriors. No, they weren't. They were human beings who farmed their land and fished the river. Mm-hmm. And hunt for food. Mm-hmm. And build villages and build cities. Mm. And taught their children how to read and write. The other myth that Africans didn't read and write. We had some of the biggest libraries in the world before Europe had its first library. We could start in the Mali Kingdom with Sankore, University of Sankore. You know, in the 12th century, we were selling books to Europe. They didn't know what books were. This is history. Read the work of, what's his name? Ibn
Some.
Khaldun.
Hmm?
You know, Ibn Khaldun. His book is called The Philosophy of History,
Mm-hmm.
and a number of others. But just learn who you are. Love who your ancestors were. And let's build for the future. Food, clothing, shelter, safety. We got the money to provide it. We make enough money. Just under the present condition, how can African Americans spend $2 trillion last year and say they got poverty? There's something wrong with who you're spending your money with and what you're spending your money on. And who are you investing your money with? No one, no group. We're about 45, maybe 50 million here, right? $2 trillion and we got poverty. Does that make any sense? There's nothing logical about that, except the stupidity of where you spend your money, with whom you spend your money, and where you invest that money. Susan shouldn't be here running trailers asking for donation. We've got millionaires who can put $10 million into the enterprise of the Daily Pan-African TV and never miss a penny of it. If their minds were right, if their consciousness was clear, if the body of knowledge about Africa that they hear comes from our ancestors' schools of thought, you know. Well, somebody gonna come to your enemy, gonna come to your country and says, "Oh, what you worship is superstitions. That's juju." And we run, "Oh, we stay away from the juju. Oh, the juju is gonna hurt me." Well, if the juju is gonna hurt you, why didn't we use it to hurt the invaders? If that's what juju does. If I can poison you by going in a little corner and pouring this or that, why don't I do that and eliminate the people who are holding the Francophone states hostage with a contract while they got the guns of the French Foreign Legion to the back of their head, and the black collaborators who've been trained in Paris and America running the parliaments? Then let's go do some juju. But let's not make no mistake. There is power in our indigenous tradition, but you have to practice it to be able to implement the power. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to the village and I'm going to see Nana and he's going to give me something and you're going to bring some powder back and sprinkle." That's not how it works. Physics started in Africa. Chemistry started in Africa. Biology started in Africa. Surgery started in Africa. That's our religion. That's our sacred science. We knew ecology. We knew cosmology. We knew how nature worked. I'm looking at my beautiful sister, Dr. Tata. She's gorgeous today, isn't she? But she's made up of the dirt of the earth. The dirt. That dirt, that earth. And so am I. It grows, and we call it plants. But where does the plant get its nutrients? It absorbs earth. When we eat the plants, we're eating earth. If we eat animals, those animals ate the plant, which came from earth. Do you understand what I'm saying? Simple, common science, okay? I'm made up of earth. I'm made up of light, energy, sunlight, moonlight, planet lights, and I'm made up of water, hydrogen, and oxygen. And so are you. But it's configured in such a way that it allows for this animation, both consciously and subconsciously, to take place and maneuver in the world. That's basic African science. Study any of our systems. That's basic African science. Uya in the Yoruba represents the wind. That represents philosophically change. You know, that represents guardianship. It says, "Oh, Oya's main job is to sit at the gate to the cemetery." That means she's the custodian of ancestral wisdom. Study your system. You'd be shocked. Harvard got nothing on the average African village. Let me say that to you again. Harvard, Yale, Cambridge got nothing on the wisdom and knowledge of the average African village if you just begin to learn it, study it, and practice it again. Then you'll see why they have to force you to be down. Our ancestors gave the world what you're calling science, especially the basics, the physics, chemistry, biology, the arithmetic or mathematics. Everything else is the servant of those 5 pieces. And that came from our minds because we're made up of everything in the universe. We made up of the water, we made up of the light, we made up of the soil. You know? We ingested the air, but that means we're ingesting the gases. We ingested the food, that's the minerals from the earth. Okay? We ingested the energy, that's the fire. You know, earth, what is called earth, water, fire, and what else? The gases or the air. That's who we are. Ancestors understood that. Go back and read books in ancient Egypt. But ancient Egypt isn't the only place that left books. Tens of thousands of books makes up the libraries of Mali. Do you know the whites are stealing those books, those papyrus, and taking it to Europe? Just like they've stolen our Benin art and other art. Even today, that Mali have one of the oldest ancient libraries in the world. So ECOWAS, what are you doing to preserve that Malian library from Timbuktu University, which was there before there was a single university in Europe or America? Wake up, African people, in 2022. Become who you really are. Get the knowledge the ancestors have left you and put it to work for your own survival. You shouldn't have to leave your country, leave your home, go abroad among strangers and suffer all kinds of abuse to make a few dollars, to bring back home, or to send back home, to provide food, clothing, and shelter. We should be able to do that in our lands, in our home country. As we fight to remove these borders that block us, because none of these countries are real African countries. These are European constructs that we've been forced into after so-called colonialism has ended. But colonialism hasn't ended. You know, Kwame Nkrumah left us the most beautiful book. It's called Neo-Colonialism, the New Colonialism. Everyone should buy Kwame Nkrumah's Neo-Colonialism and read that book. And our monies that we're making abroad, I see someone is being clear that we must invest in our freedom as a people. Many lives lost unnecessarily, and we still holding court. Must come to a verdict now, and I agree. And the verdict is that we're now going to take control of the running of Africa. And we're going to do it without murdering one another for one foreign adversary or another. We're going to fight to take control of those governments on the village level. We're going to go sit at the feet of some of the chiefs instead of laughing at them. But that's what we do. We laugh at them. Go sit at their feet and say, oh, Nana, oh, Baba, teach me what you know. Go with the recorder. You can download a tape recorder on every phone there is, so you don't have to say, oh, I can't find a tape recorder. Download the app to your phone and sit at the feet of the great minds that's in every village in Africa. Don't fool you because his cloth is raggedy, because his sandal is broken, and his feet is ashy, and maybe he couldn't go to the barber that day. You sit with that mind. I've learned so much. Most of what I've learned is not in anybody's university because I have no doctorate. I have a doctorate, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I have nobody's master's. And the bachelor's they gave me is because I was such a militant. They were scared to death to get me out of the college. They graduated me. They really did. They just gives a gift. Just get them out of here, and they graduated me. But I sit at the feet of Nana Puasa, God bless her soul, who died at 101 in Kumasi. Bafo Okotu, who isn't the most loved man in parts of Ghana, but he was linguist to two Santa Hennies. I sat at his feet. I sit at the feet of those who walk with Niamugi Gamancha, who is the king of the Ga people. He's my younger brother, but he's really my big brother, Nana Kwamina and Ketsia, the fifth of Esukado, you know. And my Omanhen, Nana Sapang Abagogo, where there I'm Nana Kopi and Pansa, the second. And then in Latte, many of my friends and some family is there now in Ghana celebrating the Asurjabi festival for the last 7 days. They didn't care nothing about this COVID. They got on a plane and they went to Ghana to participate in that ceremony. You know, there's all these shrine houses and schools in Africa and every nation state, every ethnic area where our tradition is alive and well and being practiced.
Ashe.
And we need to go learn. No, they're not in the university where you can go enroll, but you can walk into a village and you can ask to speak to the chief priest or priestess. And you tell them why you're there. And if they discern that you are honest and sincere, they will teach you. They will teach you. When I have an illness in my body, I pick up my telephone and I call Haji. And he'll say, who do you know coming to America in the next week or 2 weeks? And my medicine will come, not from CVS. Okay. So we need to turn ourselves around and look at what we got before it's all gone. They can only hold on for so long. I remember going into Uganda, 94. I was actually in Uganda when the massacre took place, the genocide in Rwanda. I was actually having lunch with Paul Kagame at that time, me and my friends. But before we met with Paul and the others, I went to the tomb of the Kabakas. You know, the Kabakas are the kings of the Bakongo people. What? And I don't know why they chose me. There were some of my other friends who had come to the conference. They were shushing them out, throwing them out of the shrine when I walked up. And somebody came and says, oh, they want you. You come. And they sat me down. And they talked to me about their history. And they talked to me about each of the Kabakas. And they talked to me about how they buried their dead. And they talked to me about the wisdom of the ancestors. Then they took me to the village where there was this priest who did my reading for me, which I can't tell you what I was told, but he did a reading which was on point. But when I walked into the yards, I recognized many of the deity symbols or the symbols of the forces of nature. They were the same as the ones I studied in Ghana and Nigeria. And I go, like, our system is universal. It's one. It's all over Africa. The same system in Cameroon. They may call Oya by a different name, or Eshu Legba by a different name, or Ogun by a different name. But they're talking about the same force of nature, the same principles of physics that we call Orisha. Those that we call Orishas are principles of physics. Some are, how do you say, formulas of chemistry. And we're playing with them, laughing at them, looking at a dead person on a cross and saying it's going to help us and our condition gets worse and worse and worse by the millions we praying to the same enemies symbols of reality, while our conditions get worse and worse and worse. Come on, even common sense will say stop. Stop. The only person you owe anything to is the universe itself. The universe itself. Because that's who you are. You're a manifestation and a display of an aspect of the essence of the universe itself. And our ancestors knew that. And they concocted science explanations for that. That's called our ancient culture. And until we return back to that, we will be perpetual slaves of our enemies' oppressive culture. It is as simple as that. So 2022 should be a time to turn around, and walk backwards into the house of your ancestors and ask them for guidance with their wisdom. Go to the village. Stay in the hut where you got to go and get that water from the one well or the one pump or even the river for a few days. I know we're used to the nice shower and the whole deal, but go to where the people are still human beings, where they're still natural God beings. And if you think I'm wrong saying God beings, look at our language system, especially when you look at the system we call the Bantu system. Every word that represents people, person, place, or thing has as its prefix or suffix their word for God. That should tell you something. That should tell you that they understood something very clearly. So let's stop faking it. We're going to be African. Let's be Africans. In our words, in our deeds, in our thoughts, in our behavior, in our habits, no matter what the cost is. And I guarantee you, the cost will get minimal and minimal and minimal as you get close to being the African we were born to be.
I share.
Well, Sister Susan, I'll just come hanging out with you, and you always tell me, speak your own truth, but the truth is simple and it is constantly repetitive no matter how much we say it. It is to be African or not to be at all for us. If we want to say, I am, I exist, then that has to be as an African. Anything else is a clone or an aberration of somebody else, a hologram of someone else. If you want to be a real living being, the African must agree with themselves, within themselves, that I'm going to be an African and I will find out how to be that no matter what the cost. Because only an African can rebuild Africa for Africans in the way we want to see it, starting in the 22nd century of this 22nd century or 21st century, whatever it is. So I'm glad to be back on Pan-African Daily TV. I'm still trying to get over, when you get sick and you're down, it takes a lot out of your body and a lot out of your energy system. And then you have to build that back again, So I'm still trying to restore myself because I had a knee replacement. And it wasn't just cutting and putting some little fix it. They took the knee my mother gave me and they cut it off with a saw and threw it in the garbage can, and they gave me a metal knee and put it inside of me and sewed me back up. So I'm learning how to use this knee made out of titanium, which came from Africa, thank God, and porcelain, which makes up my kneecap, and plastic, which makes up my new meniscus. So that's what the struggle is. I can walk very well, not as strong as I want to. I can drive a car again. I can walk up steps, something I couldn't do for years. So it's a big advantage, but it takes healing. It's a process. I'm into the 4th month. They said it takes about 8 months to a year to really for your whole body to come back together, not just the physical body. But when something is taken out of you, it disrupts your spiritual energy flow as well. And all of that has to redirect. The nervous system has to redirect and restore. And so that's what I'm trying to do. But 2022 is going to see me trying to be more of an African than I was in 2021. Okay? That's what. So, Sister Tata, it's on you.
2022 is going to make me a better Africa than I was, a better African. What more else do we even need to add or to take? We want to thank you. And of course, nothing is taken out of you. It's just, the time that you have to spend teaching us, particularly those that are still really afraid to go
Mhm.
to the village. Most of us are so privileged that we grew up in the village. And
Mhm.
like I said, so privileged, so rich, and so filled with everything, the energy that we have that could sustain us despite, the melange, like despite, the concoctions of the West, but we still had to because of what we ate, what we learned, what we knew when we had nothing. That was the best gift the universe could give to us, all the children that grew up in the village. And exactly like what you said, the world termed us the poor, actually. And we heard only about developmental aid or donor programs when we came to the West. We never ever heard anything like that when we were on the continent. So you can
Mhm.
imagine how this information actually is disconnected until you're here. And then you begin to hear some stories that you ask yourself, is it really you? The first thing, you're shocked, to see the even the images that they present and most of the things they
Mhm.
even say. So you start to learn again and to know, but from what perspective. So we are so grateful and thankful that we have you, Baba, and that we can sit at your feet now and tap the energies from your ancestors. But of course, like you said, all of us are going back to the village to drink of that fountain of our ancestors and to bathe in the river. That I did it every time, and that I will still do it. I took my kids and they did it over and over. When you bathe in the river, honestly, it is something else. Like Baba James is saying, I grew up there at the foot of the mountain, the hills, and we all walked barefooted, right?
Mhm.
I'm sitting here and talking to you, and a lot of people think, oh, Dr. Susan is no, I'm a village girl, and I used to say it, and I would always say it because that's where the riches of Africa is, in the village,
Mhm.
right? So I'm so grateful and I'm thankful, Baba, that you're here and that you're healing. At least now, this not that we want that knee to hurt, no, but that knee is there to put you there so that you can come once a week to teach us what we need to know. By the time all that teaching that your ancestors put in that knee would be okay, you wake up from there. If you want to fly, you fly. I'm only also your mother of your ancestors and giving
Mhm.
you back that energy to say that the purpose of you actually sitting there or taking anything was to teach us. Because for one reason, if we still have one that is truthful, and that's why we don't give you any topic, you just come and you teach us what your ancestors give to you. Like on the Pan-African Daily, we're not asking. If you hear anybody, they say, I want to be a guest, and they say, give me a topic, then I always laugh and say, you're not qualified to be here.
Yeah.
We don't give any topic to anybody. You bring the gift that your ancestors gave you to bring and share with us on the Pan African Daily. And that's who we are, and that's what we are.
Well, may I, Sister Susan,
Yes, Papa.
tell the people who are listening to us today, um, send an email to ECOWAS and to the African Union. Send a text to them. Tell them to reconsider their behavior in this boycott of Mali and remind them of the crime they committed against Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe was the model of revolutionary victory in Africa.
Mm.
And we allow Mugabe to die in almost sadness. How dare we call ourselves leaders and not recognize that Mugabe was a symbol of the revolutionary greatness of African peoples across the world, and that the people of Zimbabwe, despite the contradictions you have to get into while you're trying to fight against the entire Western system in order to maintain the integrity of an African-based government. And we sit by like children and watch the enemies murder a brother, murder a sister, murder a nation like children with their hands tied. Hands tied with paper, because if we open it as Africans, it would not be tied anymore. So I hope people send some emails to them, send some texts to them and tell them, we don't appreciate what you have done and we don't appreciate what you're doing. And we would like to tell the African Union, stop playing like an African Union and act like a united Africa. And we want to tell ECOWAS, do what your charter said you should be doing, not helping the French to impose their colonial economic extract on African nations, but allow the nation of Mali to self-determine for themselves, even if they got to do it at the barrel of a gun. China started with the barrel of a gun under Mao Zedong. Look at China today, because they remain Chinese. And they got their country back from the British and the others. So if we really want to show we have power, every email friend we have, tell them to send an email or to send a text to the African Union and to ECOWAS and say, we as African people don't appreciate what you're doing. And if we have to meet you at the polls next election, we will meet you there to show you we don't appreciate what you've done to Mali or to Zimbabwe or to any other country that America or any European or Asian feels that I can stop you by boycotting you and isolating you, by threatening your neighbors that I'm going to cut off funds to their country. We don't need their funds. You cut off funds, I cut off trade. Let's see who will give in more quickly. I cut off your gold, your diamond, your cobalt, your tungsten, your bauxite, etc., your iron ore. So you cut off your little $2 million that doesn't do much for us anyway. Cut it off. And we'll cut off trade to you. At any rate, our elders told us out of Haiti, freedom or death. Freedom or death. Otherwise, what are you living for? To do what? To go to a party, to wear a nice dress, to wear a nice suit, to do one of the pretty little dances I see the kids on TikTok doing. I even tried to do the little dances myself. Some of them got some really nice stuff. That's not going to free me. That's going to let me celebrate my freedom. Oh, I can dance now, even with a bad knee. You gotta see me. I set my phone up there, and I'll be TikToking. I was okay, but still, we've got to be free. So please, the audience who have listened to us, send those texts and emails to the African Union and to the ECOWAS people and let them know we know how to vote in the countries we live in. We know how to send money to the opposition body. You have to stop submitting to European threats when you control the wealth that keeps their nations going. And you say, you're going to boycott my brother? No, you sit down at a table with them and work things out. If you can't sit down at a table, you're going to pop up anytime you think I'm some child, that you come with your belt called boycott when you don't like me submitting to your oppression. And then I'm going to allow you to continue to do that. We have to stop that. And so this year we want 2 million followers tuned in, and then 3 million followers tuned in to Pan African Daily TV. Everyone should tell everyone they know about Pan-African Daily TV. Use your mailing list so that we can come up with a force that can tell anybody you do not boycott any African nation. You got an issue, sit down at the table like you do with your brothers. You don't boycott England when he does something. You don't boycott France when they do something. You sit down and have discussions. You send your diplomat there, they send their diplomat here.
Ashe.
But you're going to starve my children. You're going to break down my economy. You're going to make it so our hospitals don't work. And then tell me how humane you are. After you've sat on us as a colonizing thief and murderer for centuries? How dare you? You know, bring alive the African spirit of the ancestors in your world. No force can go against them if you become them. No force can go against them if you become them. And don't be afraid. You say, well, I don't know how to do it. Yes, you do. Just do it. Just say, I'm going to be African. You'll figure that out. You figure it out. You know, when you become a man or a woman and you fall in love and somebody kiss you, you figure it out. You know what it all means.
Oh, yes.
You figure it out. So, okay, I'm done for today.
Somebody, no, thank you, Prof. Just stay there. Somebody like, how could it be? I mean, like most of the things that I don't know, Prof. I just want to throw it back, like to what you said. How come you African men say we African women are the most difficult women, but now
I
you
don't
can't
think you're
even
the most difficult at all.
wait a minute, Prof. Wait, you can't even manage one, but you're even into managing polygamy and polygamy and
Yes.
polygamy, and you are not able first to just stand in front
Well,
of
you
your
stop
oppressor
telling
and
us how
say,
good we are. Maybe because you tell us how wonderful we are and how fantastic we are, we want to share it with everybody. So say, oh,
exactly.
you're good enough for me, but don't go no further than this. Right there. But I understand what you're saying. And in our culture, the culture was clear on that question. Polygamy was an institution that communities devised out of necessity because there was always more women than men. Even today, there's more female live birth than male live birth. How do you resolve it? But just anybody couldn't run off and do that. And it was an institution managed by the women, not by the men.
Thank you. That's just what I
Okay.
wanted to say. But we're going to have
Yes.
that conversation some other time because
Right.
the problem is we have to, if we can focus first on the right thing, we don't have any issue. It is the women, it is us, the queens, that instituted to say we need help. It never
Well,
was a
remember, it was done out of necessity for harmony and balance in the community. And that
correct.
meant only maybe about 1% to 2% of men was involved in that. Monogamy is the order of today in African culture and has always been one man, one woman, because most men can't take care of one woman. So how are you going to say, I want two, I want three, for the purpose of you having sex? You can't even handle sex with one woman when she wants to do what she wants to do with you. So, you know, we know what the truth is. I'm a man. I'm not going to lie. You're the power. I know you're the power. And the women have to demand in their movement. Don't get caught up in that European woman movement, which goes to the gender question foolishness. Most African nations, if not all of them, and I think all of them was until Islam came in and Christianity came in, were what we call matrifocal, not matriarchal. That's a whole nother kind of discussion politically, but matrifocal, meaning the women were the dominant element in inheritance in society, and that the women set the parameters of what we now call curricula in society. And so we have to, that's why we got to get back to our culture. That's why we call it matrifocal. You know, Cheikh Anta Diop talks about this in almost all of his writings, you know. And so we need to start studying our elders and our ancestors and see what of the culture did they leave for us to learn from.
Ashe.
You're the in the African system, everything I've studied, and all the great people that have taught me the little bit that I know, and I only know a tiny bit, they all say the woman came first out of nature. The Black woman came first out of nature. And then she and nature brought me. And I've been making her happy ever since, until I became a European man and started exploiting and abusing her. But if you go back to being an African man, you know how to make her happy again and how to take care of her and take care of her children. Because you are the manifestation of God on earth as human. Period. People can knock it all they want, prove that that statement is wrong. Each one of us, according to African culture and the structures I've seen from the Nile Valley to West Africa, to what we brought into the Western world, especially in Haiti with the Loas, everything I've saw said that each one of us is an expression of an aspect of the divine essence having the human experience. Okay? An aspect, an expression, of an aspect of the divine essence having this human experience. And they didn't just make that up. It was the study of ecology and cosmology that informed them of that from the very beginning of time. And that beginning is a woman, you know. But you too have to give up being the white woman.
Correct.
And again become the African God woman and not being afraid of being that. You know, the whole world loves you. The whole world wants you. But the whole world is afraid of your powers. So once they get their hands on you, they want to abuse you because you willingly gave up your power, or it was taken away through abuse and genocide. So take your power back, Black woman. Take your power back, African woman. Form the blueprint for the tomorrow you want to see your children experience.
Ashe. Ooh.
You're going to write that one down, Susan.
It's already, but you know, it's not just only, I write everything, every single thing that you say. I don't even need to write it down. It's here.
But it's all, I've watched you bring on some of the most powerful chiefs and kings in Africa. And I sit and learn. I spend half of my week watching Pan-African Daily TV on YouTube, the things I miss, and taking my notes and gaining understanding. Because these brothers and sisters, the kings and the queens you've brought forward, have come with a truth that's not taught in the schools. But it is the truth that's going to free us once and for all. You know, I'm not afraid to say, I love African women. I will die for you. I spent my whole lifetime to die for you. You know, so that's just that. I can't imagine, without being crude to anyone, I can't imagine being in this company of other than an African woman in that way. I think that's clear enough, right?
Correct.
Because I know the power that you are. My mother, one day when I was an imam, and I was quite an imam, people don't understand. I was the imam over the new mosque that Malcolm X built after he left the Nation of Islam. And after his assassination, I was elected as the imam. In those days, I was Al-Hajj Amin Al-Shahid. And I would, on Tuesday nights, let young imams that we were training they had 15 minutes to do a lecture to show they'd learned the Quran and that they were studying the lessons. But when it was time for your session to finish. No discussion, no request for further time or anything. And I was very hard-handed. So this one young man wouldn't stop He was feeling so good because people were applauding. And I went and sat him down. So a few days later, I was coming up to the mosque, and he was standing outside with two men, and he pulled a pistol, a weapon, on me. I remember it was a 357 Magnum. But in those days, I was young and strong, and I was a martial artist, and and I disarmed him, and I took the gun away. And I told him he was suspended, and I presented it, of course, to my board of directors. Everybody agreed that he should not come back into the mosque until we sent for him. So about 3 or 4 months later, I'm coming home. I'm in college while I'm an imam, and I'm walking home from school to my mother's house. And my younger brother is sitting on the stoop with this man that pulled the weapon on me. And I asked him, why are you sitting with him? I told you he pulled a weapon on me at the mosque and threatened my life. And my younger brother said to me, he didn't threaten me, as though like he did that to you, but he didn't do nothing to me. I didn't see my mother coming home from work, all of 5'3". This African woman was something else. I felt something grab me by my shoulder and spun me around, grabbed my little brother, and she hit him. And my brother went on the top of the car. She lifted him and smashed him, and he fell over the hood of the car. The man who pulled the gun jumped up and started running. I'd never seen him again. Whatever she saw in my mother's face that day, when that woman slammed my brother to the hood of that car with her fists and said, if you ever not stand with your brother, I will kill you. And then she told him to get upstairs. My mother, who protected me during all of those critical years, because when you're young and you're revolutionary, you do foolish kind of decisions, but somehow she was always there. When I joined the mosque, she says, I'll be your cook, because they will not poison my child. So she became my cook. She became my cook, and I ate her food. Things I couldn't see, she saw. Things I wouldn't learn about until years later when my big brother said, oh, our mother called me and told me to fly from California because you got troubles and you can't see it. I always wondered why my brother would just show up, but he was showing up because mommy called and says, you come take care of your brother. That woman ran our family. She was the boss. We all understood that clearly. You understand? The African woman is in charge of the family. You have to reorganize yourself and assume your responsibility. Life is not about sex or adoration, or because if I can have sex and not even know your name. People do this every night. I can meet you at a club and yada yada yada, and we can go in bed and ooh and ah and do all of and it still feels beautiful. But what's missing is God, the Spirit of God. Mm-hmm. You see? And the Spirit of God, which comes through you, through your culture, via your ancestors, makes up the energy in your body. That's making love. See, that's a whole nother chapter. But the point was that the woman, we're your children, period. And if we go back to Africa, if we take it back to the African way, you'll see a lot more change than you're seeing. We've accepted this patriarchal, male-dominant political hierarchy all over Africa, and they created a mess. The mothers have to take over, like the women in Cameroon did after the First World War, and the women in the marketplace in Nigeria and Ghana. That's what triggered the movement for independence in Africa, not the men. Study the history, And it isn't about appeasing you, because, even at my old age, there are women still who say, oh, Prof is still young. So no, I'm not I'm probably the least used male anybody ever met. I've been celibate most of my life, even though I'm married and got kids. Not out of any religious habit. It was simply out of necessity and the roles we were playing in the movement and the politics and things. But one thing I learned from my teachers, most of whom were women, is that you have to take over responsibility for the guidance of the family. My job is the protection of the family. Your job is the guidance of the family. But I have to protect you so you can carry out your guidance, which give guidance also to me, the father in a house. Matter of fact, it was one Greek man back in ancient days was writing, I don't know whether it was Aristotle, saying the African man was weak. They call us Ethiopian then, because he says, in Europe, we says how the man said the house is the castle. But he says in Africa, the woman said, this is my castle. Even as far back as the ancient Nile Valley, we had that same culture. And we need to get it back again. The man is not the king until the queen makes him so. That's our culture, you know. You can be the Oni of Ife, but if you do wrong, and your mother come and your wife and bare their breasts in front of that temple or wherever you think you live, you are no longer the leader of those people. Because those women say you're not. One of the strongest kings in Ghana is called Santahene, the kings of the Ashanti nation. But he gets to be king at the approval of the queen mothers, who present him to the male elder chiefs. But those chiefs don't make that decision. The women make that decision and present him to them. And if they disagree, they can send him back. But if the woman disagree with them, she can send him back. And that's in most of our community that haven't been poisoned and tainted by the Western way of picking their leaders. So history will take away the European mystery. And things you think is weak in Africa is really things that are strong. And our women, you're the most gorgeous creature on the planet Earth. Yes, you're sweet, you're beautiful, you're fine, you're the most desired, but you're also the most powerful creature on the planet Earth, if you know who you are. It's as simple as that. We want to move out of his emotional mystery box back into our spiritual African sacred science consciousness. We want to restore the African sacred science consciousness and get out of the European emotion box. And you'll see a different power rise in Africa and among African peoples. You know. So
we've heard you. And the women are listening.
As an elder, I gotta be careful what I say, but there's
No.
nothing more beautiful, nothing greater than the African woman. Nothing. Period. Even when she makes a mistake, her mistake is a better mistake than my mistake. You know? She is the core of the African world. But we've allowed the West to even take our history and misrepresent it to us. I tell you, the king is this and the pharaoh is this. Please. Go back to ancient Egypt. The king sits on the knee of the woman as a child. She puts him up there as an image of power. And she can take him down if she uses the African way. Your femininity is not going to die because you have power. You know? And we'll all get old, like me. I can't run the 400 yards dash anymore, the 100 yards and break records or play football or martial arts and all the things I did. But I've taken the knowledge from all those things and placed it up here. And I can talk to people about being an African and struggling to remain an African and struggling to become an African again. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. But we need to understand how Africa works. And our woman was not a slave to men. Mm-hmm. And she was not a slave to sex. Mm. And the West have turned his woman and our women into sex slave for men, no matter what they know, how much degrees they got, how much power they got. That's what they reduced them to. And use force to keep them in that place. Because the woman had forgotten the power she has. Especially when she unites with her sisters.
Mm. Yes.
Anyway, I've said what I had to say. I hope the brothers get it. Just be free. Be free. Secret to life is to have no fear. Freedom or death. Freedom is being shackled to your identity. We are the ancestors that we pour libations to. Our original ancestor is God itself. Mm-hmm. And God, or the divine, or the universe, first manifestation as a human was a Black African woman. And that is that. Nobody can change that. Except if we buy into someone else's false religion and fake philosophy. Then you can be confused, as we've been for centuries. But I hope most of my confusion is gone. Because I don't want anything except freedom. I don't want anything. I'm not worried about having a woman. Who's going to resist a soldier that's willing to die for them any day of the week? So I'm not worried about that. I never had to worry about that. But I had to make sure I maintain the dignity and integrity one should have between himself and his sisters in the world. It's freedom or death. I'm God having a human experience. Those of the Western religions who don't like that, that is too bad. I am God having a human experience. No one has ever seen another God except the one that they experience in the mirror having the human experience for them. If you've seen him, introduce him to me and I will bow at his feet. But you can't introduce him to me because it doesn't exist that way. When God wants to create, she have me and the woman come together in the name of the universe and procreate. And that woman becomes that aspect of God that creates when she gives birth to the next human being. No God pop out the sky and do that. You do that. You are the creator. Show me somebody else that was created. Even if you did it in the tube, you had to take the egg out of her womb and the sperm out of my, whatever that thing that swells up when we get older, prostate. That's the truth. That's how African culture teaches reality, not this foolish fairy tale game that people have imposed on us, and we're willing to kill each other over fairy tales, European fairy tales, myth, called theology. The truth is the only light. Show me a baby that isn't created by the woman. So the woman then is the creator, or that aspect of the divine that creates. To put it in language so people can understand, so they don't come and mess with you and say you said something against a religion. Because what I just said is scientific fact. Anybody mess with you, we're going to sue them and get lots of money. And I say I'm God having a human experience. No one can disprove that. Who are they to say I'm not? Who? Who has the knowledge of judgment to say, I'm not? When you brought me some other person fictitiously out of a mytho history who said the same thing, and you said, that's cool. But I am, as you are, according to African culture, an expression of aspects of the divine essence having the human experience. The Ewe have a term, they call their God in the Ewe or the Ewe language, Mau. That's when they're making an expression directly to the totality, Mau. But to explain who Mau is this Sobe Lisa, the totality of creation itself. And when they want to describe what I just said, I'm God having a human experience, they say Voodoo Daha. The essence of the divine is in me. Voodoo Gadzi. The essence of the divine is in nature. So our ancestors were some foolish. They understood. They created physics, chemistry, biology as a way to explain their theology. Mathematics, geometry, explain the movements of things and the sharing of things for the different and various use of things that complement each other. Somebody says, I like carrots. Carrot is nothing but sunlight processed as earth into a vegetable that gives you something called beta carotene that will help your eyesight. Beets is sunlight that had a relationship with earth. So we can say God the Sun, and Aset, Mother Earth, had an intercourse, and they produced beets, which can strengthen the heart, because that configuration of energy in the beets was configured to the vibration of the heart, like the one in the carrot were configured to the vibration in the eye, and on and on. It's our sacred science. We weren't crazy. Ancestors weren't crazy. We were just brutalized by an extreme mutation off of our original stock. Physically brutalized by an ignorant, misplaced consciousness that didn't understand reality. And we're still going through that syndrome today. So be African and be free. You know how I feel when I walk through the world? I feel like I'm God having a human experience. Period. I'm not scared, she says. That's okay. Because I need you to make your peace with Jesus and Allah and Yahweh and all of those other folks. I don't have to make my peace with them. I told them a long time ago, unless you're going to explain yourself appropriately, get in your place and stay there. And when you've figured out how to explain yourself appropriately, then come. And then I'll walk with Jesus and I'll walk with Allah and I'll walk with Yahweh. Because they weren't bad things. They just misunderstood things. Most of the stories came up out of Africa anyway. We just don't know how to interpret them anymore. That's why they say the secret to life is to have no fear. I won't let anything hurt you, Miss Susan Tata. Don't worry. We have forces and powers in the universe that will always protect you. Because you've come to do the greatest good. And you will be protected to do the greatest good.
Ashe. Thank you, Baba. Thank you. All of us. We've heard it. Be African, be free. I mean, we're going to rebroadcast. Sorry, we're going to rebroadcast this session tomorrow, 12 p.m. 12 p.m. European time. I think it's about 9 a.m. out there in the States, because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm working. I wish I could have been there live. Yes, we're going to rebroadcast it again live. Thank you so very much, Prof. I mean, we
Oh,
can't
thank
get.
you, Sister Susan. Okay,
But
so I look forward to seeing you again soon.
yes, Baba, it would be necessary for us to treat anyway. Like we say, we would just touch the points and the focus. But what you actually talked about, motherhood, mothers of the nation. We had you and I were on the Professor Baina conversation on the mother of the nation. That the mother should
Mhm.
pull in and take up their responsibility. How they build the communities to ensure that that the balance that we are missing now is in it. And so I want to thank you so much, because I have my sisters with me watching. I have Sinovia who is watching, and we had this conversation. I have a sister Cheryl and all the
Mhm.
other sister Kalena. All of them are watching, and we also have been organizing to say yes, we want to come in the front line and start teaching, just teaching anything that you have a passion and as a mother of a nation to build each and every one of us in anything that nobody is. We're in a journalism school here, you do know that. We're more of an educational platform, and so we're going to mobilize ourselves and really start teaching the basis and even learning from one another. So I want to thank you, Baba, for actually saying this again. We didn't talk about it. Don't think that Professor James and we have some back conversations, because I only meet him here like he meets me here, right?
Mhm.
And
That's
yes,
very true. That's
yes.
absolutely very true.
So we have to take it forward. Thank you so very much, Baba, and we wish
Okay,
you
my
a
sister.
quick recovery. And we're going to have you anytime soon. Now we know that you're there for us.
Yes,
We would be at your knees at every time. So we see us next week, Baba.
peace
Thank
and
you very much.
blessings. Bye bye
Thank
now.
you. Blessings. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. And yes, we thank all of us. It was that kind of powerful message that we know. King Bongane is also coming up next week also to deliver. Remember, we had promised ourselves all that. We're still looking forward for other elders to come up and give us the way forward. So in the meantime, we were reporting on other issues, getting their agenda on. So they'll be coming up one after the other to give us exactly this empowerment that we need. Be African and be even more African in 2022. If you don't know how, like he said, you're going to figure it out. Just say, I want to be African again, and you'll figure out the way. Your ancestors will direct you. It is the same thing like we say, tell Jesus what you want him to do, and he does it for you. So you ask, and it is given to you. Most often, we Africans don't ask. Let us ask to be that we were created for, and we will be given. You just see things opening up, and you're just doing it. Okay, so I thank you so much. We're going to see us tomorrow. And remember, we promised our brother in the Caribbean, Damien. Damien brought up a very, I can say, intuitive. What is that word? Jesus. We have to. We have to start our pidgin, because pidgin is what I can master and I can say it anytime. So, Brother Damien Prescott was here last week, and we have another a session with him tomorrow, and he talked about this kind of alternative talent, bringing the talents together in the domain of sport, right? In the domain of all sort of sport or activities that keep us healthy. And we're going to start a world premiere. This one is also a borrowed word, isn't it? A premier league or championship or whatever, but in every discipline. And he presented a very nice, simple concept where we start from the village. We don't even want to say community. We start from the village model, like Prof has told us. Every little thing is found in that village model. So we have to study the African village model. I also knew it, even though I grew up there, but there's some key points that Professor James is saying, and I think I saw it like a child, but I even didn't know what it all meant. But it makes a lot of sense now. And so we'll go back to the village model of the African society, as secret science, asking all this, even going back to find out which herbs does what. So I thank you so much for being with us. We're going to see ourselves tomorrow, same time. I do apologize for yesterday, but like you always know things that will happen. If we don't communicate anything, and you're going to see our patterns are changing. Even flyers, we're not going to do them. Topics, we're not going to do them because exactly that's how we are targeted. What topic, who is coming up, and you see techniques that acting, or we cannot have access to go live or anything like that. So just watch out. Like I said, please click the notification button, subscribe. You will see when we post. When I post shortly and we are live, it's also a way of communication to say we have to stay awake. You know, we don't have to go to the same system, or we have a calendar and then we are reminded 1 week before. No, we never were like that. When the gong sounds, you know, when the trumpet sound, all of us are running, you know, to the foot of the elders. We never had, oh, we never even had watches, because those were all luxuries in the village, you know, but we were so awake and alert at any time. And so anytime they would call at the palace, everybody's just running. If your father would just make a sound, even when they were coming home, or your mom, just like, you see, everybody just sit up, right? So we have to be alert. We just have to be so alert. Anytime you just see Pan-African Daily or the platforms like this go live, just join. So the best thing to do is just click your notification button. And if you're here, and those that have not done it, when you are here, just call the others. That's how the village functions. We're not going to get any science to go back to say this. It's just being us and just doing these things unapologetically, right? If I don't comb my hair, I can come and be combing it here. You've seen me a couple of times, oh, my scarf fall off. No, we're not here to some kind of professionality in some kind of beauty tips or so, because we are innerlish. In our inner selves, we're so beautiful more than any other thing, right? So I thank you so much. We're going to see us tomorrow. Stay alert. Stay alert. But I'm going to rebroadcast this show. I think Patrick and Naisha, who are in charge of rebroadcasting, are listening to me right now. And we're going to put this up 9 a.m. your Eastern time, or 12 p.m. Central European time. So thank you so much. Good night to all of you. Tuku pamoja. Good night. Bye bye. Oh. That one a pigeon. Una bye bye. Oh. Good night for all man. Okay. Una bye bye. You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want. Unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherlands calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.